It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
702-759-9799. Call or text that or sound off on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Conduit News. And welcome back to the program. Good friend, we have Josh Waters, and Josh is from Political Strategies. Josh, thanks so much for being on the program, sir.
Hey, good morning, Paul. How's everything going?
Going well, going well. How are things going over there in your neck of the woods?
Oh, they're going well. Staying busy. I know everyone's looking forward to the primaries coming up here in a few weeks, and so busy researching that and working on some other things. And, of course, the tax task force will be meeting in a couple of weeks. So,
yeah.
But been able to go to a few conferences lately as well. So it's been a good few weeks lately.
Well, so one of those conferences was the 1789 Alliance, correct? Tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, the 1789 Alliance, well, kind of backing up, I think a lot of people this day and age would agree, and, Conduit co-founder Joe Maynard has said, that at the federal level we probably realize that the vote of the people, that it's lost to the vote of the people. But what we can do is at the state level basically take back our country from the state level. And that's something this 1789 Alliance group believes as well. So what it is, Paul, is it's a group of similar organizations to Conduit for Action, mostly 501c4 nonprofits that are action organizations that do, lobbying at the Capitol, inform the citizens about legislation that's going on, what politicians are saying versus what they're doing. And so this conference was basically, I've gone the last 2 years, and it's a time for, these groups to come together, talk about best practices, what's worked in their state, what hasn't worked, and also just come together and talk about success stories that they've had and kind of see how they can take those to their own states and succeed as well for the cause of liberty.
Wow. So we have these other states, and you've met a lot of these other groups that are kind of in the trenches here, and are they having some of the same problems that Arkansas is having? Are we unique in that?
No, and that's something that really opened up my eyes, Paul, and that's something I kind of want to come on and talk about, encouraging the listeners to know, this isn't something, the fight for liberty, the fight for economic freedom, for smaller government in Arkansas, that fight is going on all around the country, in Texas, in Virginia, in Pennsylvania, other red states, maybe some bluer states as well. And the fight is, kind of the same characters when you think about the big government establishment Republicans are sometimes the biggest enemies to economic freedom and liberty in their states, and they're having to push back against that and get some conservative, constitutional conservatives elected. And so that's something, we talk about, for example, scorecards and the pushback that, there is in Arkansas sometimes on scorecards, because when you start telling the voters how their legislator actually voted versus what they said, that's a pretty powerful opportunity. And so that's what we're seeing some of these other states do as well, is a big emphasis on scorecards and letting the people know so they can at least be informed what their legislator actually voted on versus what they said.
Yeah, so you're saying these other groups in other states, they do the scorecard as well. And I mean, are there how do they handle criticism, I guess? I mean, what are they criticized from, leaders who maybe claim to be conservatives? I mean, because around here, if you point out that somebody voted for a tax increase and you say, well, that's not the conservative approach, we kind of have this, our politicians seem to have a knee-jerk reaction where they say, how dare you say I'm not a conservative, Do they get that same thing going on where they are?
Yeah, I'll share with you a story that was told from a friend from Missouri. What they did, they had a scorecard, and they would go to Republican committees, Lincoln Day dinners, those kind of events, and they would just, pass out the scorecard and let people know how their legislators voted. Well, there's this one particular event that this guy had went to, and he passed out the scorecard, and one of the legislators was actually there. I think she had like a C or a D on the scorecard, but she was kind of known, as this huge defender of the Second Amendment, and so a very socially conservative legislator. Well, this organization, kind of like Conduit, focused more on economic issues, fiscal policy. And so when we looked at the voting record on that, she had I think it was a C or a D. Well, Paul, this lady got so mad that this gentleman showed up and just passed out the scorecard and let her constituents know how she voted on fiscal issues. She tore up the scorecard in the face of this guy and stormed out of the building. And so then he was left, and he was the only other speaker there, and so he was able to use more time to talk through the issues and what these votes meant and what these bills meant. And so, that's something that I think we're going to see in all these different states, stories like that. And some similar situations have happened. And, I shared the example of, whenever the majority leader of your state makes a scorecard on scorecards, and it just got the biggest laugh. People were laughing, and one of the leading conservatives in the room said, he said, that's when you know you're winning, is when they have to make a scorecard to try to debunk your scorecard.
Yeah, that's pretty funny that they got the biggest kick out of that. Yeah, so maybe we are number one in something when it comes to absurdity. But wow, yeah, I mean, if see, and that's the reaction that you want. I mean, and what I mean by that is this situation, this story that you're telling, legislator sees a scorecard they don't like, so they stand up and they rip it up and they take their ball and they go home. I mean, that kind of reaction alone is one where you say, I don't care if the scorecard's true or not. If that's your reaction, in a public debate, I'm pretty sure that you're every one of your decisions and the wisdom behind them needs to be called into question, because I don't think you need to be representing me if you're going to react in such a juvenile way. So.
Yeah. Paul, something that we talked about at this conference was at the very beginning this time was, what are your strengths? And something that I think is the strength of Conduit, and this is what I shared with the group, was kind of 4 points. 1, tell the truth. 2, be willing and able to read. 3, be willing and able to do math. And 4, be willing and able to remember. Those seem like such basic things, but those really resonated with people at the conference, because sometimes when we get into the weeds on policy, it confuses people. But if you, at the end of the day, if you tell the truth, if you can read, if you're willing and able to do math, and you can remember, your guest Chuck Clifton earlier today, he was going back in history and saying, well, this is what they're saying now. But if you remember, they said this before, or if you remember back, a few years ago, this is what the law said. And so I think that's a very, basic core function of what we could do to be effective advocates of liberty, is to be able to read, able to do math, and be able to remember. It seems basic, but I think it's so powerful because it really flies in the face of sometimes what we hear.
Yeah, and I think the remember part is the best one, because the narrative and it changes so often, and their version of events changes to suit where they want to go next. And it was just like we were talking about last hour, these dish payments to reimburse hospitals for uncompensated care. They were supposed to go away with Obamacare, and it was going to hurt hospitals. They've never gone away, and yet the talking point that the payments were going to go away was the key reason many of these legislators said we had to implement Medicaid expansion, Obamacare, now called Arkansas Works. And it's just really sad. It's like, well, we have to be able to remember, and at some point, the next time you tell us one thing, maybe we have cause to not trust you and not even listen to you. I think at some point we've got to get to that place. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we'll have to wait and see. Josh, we've got the website up right now. It's 1789alliance.com, and it's exactly what you say. 1789 Alliance exists to catalyze, incubate, and build movements that empower citizens. We provide developmental support and networking opportunities for citizens and organizations promoting greater civic engagement and participation. So it seems like it's a great organization, and you met some pretty interesting folks while you were there?
Yeah, a lot of great folks from, really all over the country, from, like I said, from Texas to New York, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and everywhere in between, too, and just doing a lot of the same work. And so, it was encouraging as well to see, okay, sometimes you might get down, or the grassroots conservatives might get down, But I want to encourage all the grassroots conservatives to know, we're doing our part here in Arkansas. These other groups are doing their part in their state. And if we keep the fight, we can take back this country from the state level. When you think about the 10th Amendment, everyone always, says, yeah, states' rights, 10th Amendment. Well, something my econ law professor always mentioned to us was, it's not just the states, it's for the people. The people, what's not specifically spelled out in the Constitution, is reserved to the state and the people. And so I think that's a very powerful thing. It doesn't just have to be, the state and organizing through the state function. It can be the people rising up and themselves organizing and fighting back and saying, hey, this is what we want our government to look like in our area of the country. And so that's what I see a lot of these organizations doing, and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's encouraging to me that they have some of the same struggles and the same criticism as Conduit or in Arkansas, I would just probably say Conduit has. No, there are some others. I take that back. I mean, you look at Family Council, like they've come under fire. They came under fire for their scorecard as well, and everything else. So, there are Arkansas organizations that to me is encouraging. That there are people. Yeah. And this is really, if we're honest here, I mean, this is a battle that's happening among people who claim that they're conservatives, mostly under the Republican Party banner. And that's really where this struggle is taking place. And so it is encouraging that other states are having similar problems and that we do need to continue to, press forward, just get the information to the people, get the truth to the people. And I think over time, a broad view is going to show that the people are going to make different decisions, and hopefully liberty will advance. So,
yeah, I mean, I'll just take example in Virginia. Virginia had a lot of very close elections. Now, remember, Virginia is not as conservative, it's not Republican as Arkansas. If anything, it's probably almost a blue state at this point. But Virginia, in their state legislature, was controlled by the Republican Party, both in the House and by a one-vote majority in the Senate. And, Paul, just on that one-vote majority in the Senate, they were able to stop Medicaid expansion in the state of Virginia. By one vote in a blue state, the Republicans were true constitutional conservative Republicans and stopped Medicaid expansion in Virginia. And so that's a success story, and there's other success stories from around the country.
Now, at the time, now that's what Virginia has a Democratic governor, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder if that has anything
to do. And so now
they're
facing the fight again because, as you know, the elections went, they still have a majority in the Senate and the House, but it's a much smaller majority in Virginia. So they're fighting the fight again right now, actually. And so I've been reaching out and sharing as much information, be like, do not do this. It will blow up your budget. You won't be able to get anything else done. And really just going through a lot of what you talk about and what Conduit has been talking about for years on that issue. And that's something that's been good at this conference to see, okay, this policy in your state, how has it worked out?
Yeah, and it's exactly right. I'm glad that you're doing that, reaching out to Virginia. They tried to do the same thing in Georgia, and I did something similar because Eric Erickson's show out of Atlanta. He's a very powerful voice down there, and I went on his show and it was basically like, hey, do not do this. Whatever you do, it has been a disaster in Arkansas. Please do not do this. And so anyway, I think to date they have not expanded Medicaid, so they still may be trying to. But anyway, let's hope Virginia doesn't make that mistake and the Republicans actually act like Republicans. But well, Josh, I appreciate you coming on talking about the 1789 Alliance. I know you've met some great folks, and I appreciate you actually connecting these folks as well that you've met in other states with the program, because I know we're going to be interviewing them soon, and I really appreciate that and look forward to it.
Yeah, well, thanks for getting them on there. I think it's going to be good, and hopefully serve as an encouragement to all the listeners, all the grassroots warriors out there in this state to see, hey, we're not alone in this fight for liberty. There's other people around the country that are joining arms, and I think it's going to be good and hopefully be encouraging. So I'm looking forward to hearing them on the show in the next few weeks.
All right, Josh Waters, appreciate you with political strategies. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Paul. Take care.
All righty, folks, we got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.